Hello and welcome back to the Kung Fu Book Review. Today we're going to be talking about the Wing Chun wooden dummy, which is this sort of largish book, heavily used in my case, so by Sam Chan and Brad Groom. So here we go. It's a larger book, as you can see, dimension wise, because it has a lot of full size pictures of the dummy form. With enough detail that you can see it in. And as you can see by my one, it's been quite heavily used, so it's really has started to disintegrate in this case. Right, my overall impressions of this book are, it's difficult to teach the wooden dummy in book form, as several authors that have written books about it have said, but this book is a very good training companion. It's a very, very helpful guide, I found, and mainly because of the sections surrounding the actual photographs of the techniques on the dummy, where they explain the applications, they go through and they give a couple of each, sort of suggestions, and also that they constantly refer to the theory, right? And they have sections at the beginning that talk about theories, how to apply the dummy, stages of learning the dummy, etc. So, really, really, really solid book. I definitely, if you're a Wing Chun practitioner who's training on the wooden dummy, I very much recommend this book. It's one of the better ones that has been written about wooden dummy training. So, who is Sam Chan? Interesting history from this guy. So again, disclaimer here, I've never trained with him. He's based over in the States, somewhere Midwestern US. So no idea about how good he actually is. But he writes a good book, So, and again, it's based off the principles of the art, which is very, very important for Wing Chun. So, his background is actually in Jiao Ga. So he started with a slightly more external set, but then he trained with Chun, Ip Man's sons, both of them, I think. So whilst he was over in Hong Kong, and then he moved over to the States, opened up a Kung Fu school, and has a bunch of students. So, and the other guy that wrote the book with him is his top student, which is this guy, Brad Groom, who's done sort of several other Japanese arts, and then obviously fell in love with Wing Chun and carried on doing that. So basically this is the two of them throughout the book, so with doing all the applications, etc. So again, I don't know the full details of these guys, and I've never trained with them, but the material that they present in the book is solid. So what have we got in the book? I'm not going to browse through the sections of it and show you everything because it's disintegrating a little bit. But it is well written, I'd say. With it comes with all of the nice bits that we would like. So glossary of terms, which I think is very important for the Cantonese arts, because even if you translate it directly into sort of Pinyin Mandarin, that probably won't reflect how it definitely won't reflect how a Cantonese practitioner pronounces it, and often just putting the characters is not very helpful for the Cantonese pronunciation because it's so nuanced with so many tones, etc. So much better just to have to have a glossary at the back, I find, for the Southern Chinese art. So they've done that. It's got a nice appendix, series of appendices, which I'll come on to later, and nice index page and all of those details. They start with some history, which is sort of standard. It's a very short one. Don't focus too much on there. There are much better Wing Chun books if you want to dive into that. Really nice little short 2-pager on each of the sort of blocks of training that make up the Wing Chun system. So they talk about each of the different forms, the dummy set, the weapons, and chi sao, right? So really good. It's 2 pages, but it lays out what you should do in each stage of your Wing Chun training, and what you're trying to get out of each of the the modes of training. So that is really good. I really recommend it. It's one of the best ones I've seen. I've written just 2 pages. How do we train Wing Chun? So that's really good. And then I also really like their stages of training the dummy, where they had 4 stages where you sort of flow from one to the next, right? I think both of these guys have a kind of like, one of them has an engineering background or something, and it really comes across in this like, way that the information is presented. And that is very common actually in Wing Chun people, because Wing Chun is this sort of like, often there's this saying that it's like the science of Wing Chun, right? It's got this similar to sort of like boxing. It's got that flavor of like, it's the science. It's a technical art, right? And Wing Chun's got all these like geometric shapes, like triangular angles and footwork. So there's something in it that appeals to the engineeringly minded. I know that when I was at Imperial and studying Wing Chun, we had tons of people in the sort of aerospace engineers and mechanical engineers. They really liked it, right, for exactly that kind of logical reason, right? So they go through so they've got this great flow chart where they talk about the different stages of dummy training and how sometimes you loop back round. So you learn the set sequences, small sections, you practice those and you loop round them, and then you practice the applications and you get better and better at those. Then you learn the whole dummy set, then you run through it all again, loop back, any errors, smooth it out, and then you start remixing the dummy, right? And you start doing free dummy practice and you sort of move between the different sets, all the while circling back round and refining things by training them with partners and applications. So brilliant way of breakdown of how to actually train the dummy, how to build a program that will help you improve. And then my favorite bit of the book is the principles section, where they lay out, I think it's always 10 or 12 training principles that you should bear in mind whilst you're training the dummy. You don't need to train them all at the same time, and they really lay out that, and they say, look, so you should focus on this training session, maybe these ones at the start of your training. As they become ingrained, you can start working on other ones. Brilliant. Like I gave, on my little notes here, I gave that like tick, 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 like really strong. Wing Chun is a principle-based art, and to have a set of core principles to train in is essential when you're training in Wing Chun. Good, and that's all covered in about 18 pages, right? So there's a lot of information at the start. Now, the bulk of the book is the dummy sections, right? So of course you're going to get some of those just like frames of person standing there doing the technique, right? I'm going to do the dummy technique, and then I'm going to do this one, and then you're going to stand and do the other one, right? And of course, not ideal, as I've talked about before, better mediums for learning those kind of things. But I think the strength of this book is that for each section of the dummy, they do all the photos, then they pull apart and they say, oh, this is the first kind of key technique, right? And this is one way that it could be applied with a partner. And then you get a sort of partner breakdown of that technique. And it lets you, I think that's very important, because if you just learn the techniques dead in the air, you have this tendency that then they can just become empty movements, right? Instead, if you have at least an application in mind whilst you're learning it, then that keeps the movement pattern alive, and it lets you line it up, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, if I'm really going to get in, and like that's actually going to be a tan sao going in there, that's covering me and that's going forward, and then I can boom, strike, and they come together, everything lines up, right? And so when you play it on the dummy, it's better. So that's the right way to go about teaching it, I think. And that makes up the majority of the book, and they go through and they do the whole set, right? So nothing is missed out. It's the standard 116 movements, so the 108 plus the eight extra kicks that were added. So it's very similar. I've got a few differences in the set that I learned from my Wonshun Leong lineage, but it's very, very similar, right? So to the dummy set that I know. So yeah, it's good. Like, nothing wrong with the lineage is good. I'd say it's they focus on the simple basic applications. Like there is some more quality of movement that could be expressed, but for a basic book that you can buy off the shelf, that's brilliant. So very, very good. Again, strong for a book. And then they finish off with some stuff that I really like as well. So they include a few other sort of like supplementary training drills. So they talk about chi gurk, sticky legs at the end. They talk about the 3-section dummy, which is where you sink 3 poles separated into the ground. Quite a lot of Chinese martial arts have versions of this. Like in Xingyi, they have like a 9-pole one. There's like an 8-pole one in Bagua. And in some of the Mantis ones as well, they've got these like poles that are sunk in the ground that you sort of move around and do step and do your footwork and move around. So apparently there's a Wing Chun 3-log sunken log dummy one. They talk about that and how to train it. As I said before, they close everything off with all the terminology and how Wing Chun terms are used. with nice detailed descriptions. So not just like this means, like Tans out is the literal translation of it. They talk a little bit about what this technique is. And then a really cool little feature at the end is they include a full sort of diagram of how to build a wooden dummy. And I think if you just pulled it out the back of the book and gave it to a carpenter, it would be enough information for them to make you this object, right? Which is really cool, So they've basically included the diagrams for how to build your own dummy, and I think this book was published a while ago, because there's quite a lot of people selling them nowadays. Oh no, it's 2002. So there would have been people, selling dummies back then over the internet. But even so, brilliant resource, right? To have there at the end of your book. So if you really can't find someone, at least you should be able to find a guy that can, work with wood, and you give it to him and say, hey, please build me one of these. Good, and that's at the end. And then it's got a nice index, so you can look up everything as well. Overall, good job, Sam Chan and Brad Groom. It's a good book. Like, definitely one of the better wooden dummy books that I have read. And as you can see, I used it when I was initially learning the dummy sequence. I used this as my main reference guide, alongside when I was being taught it by 2 teachers. Right. So brilliant, excellent, very good. If you are training the Wing Chun wooden dummy, I give this a solid thumbs up. Definitely buy it as a supporting reference guide that will go alongside and support however you're learning the dummy set. Good. Please tell me which other Wing Chun books you would like me to review. I've got lots more, lots and lots of Wing Chun books. I've even got a couple more books on the wooden dummy. So if you want to see more books and compare and contrast type videos as well, please do post up and let me know. I would love to talk about this. As I say, I'm passionate about Kung Fu books. So the more people that don't just send a like, please do write stuff and we can get a discussion going. I'd love to talk about these topics. Speaking of likes, please like, share and subscribe. Spread the word, and let's see if we can get a little community of people that like Kung Fu and reading about it and thinking about it as well as training it. Good. Best of luck with all your training, and see you soon.